Monsieur MV Bondo, rebonjour.
Et
Vous pouvez,
rebonjour.
oui, vous pouvez laisser votre caméra du coup coupée
Oui, tout à fait.
en attendant
Pas de
votre
problème.
intervention. Merci. Il y a des personnes, des intervenants qui n'ont pas encore procédé à test son, micro, caméra, je vous encourage à le faire maintenant. On a juste une petite minute.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning or good afternoon, depending on the part of the world where you are. We are about starting the second day of the 2020 International Conference of NGOs. Welcome to all the representatives, the main representatives connected through the Zoom platform, and the other representatives of our NGOs, as well as observers connected through the webcast on YouTube. Just as a reminder, interpretation is available in English and French. Je rappelle également pour les représentants.
Let me just remind you, for the main representatives who are connected via the Zoom platform, that you have two ways of communicating with us. There's the Q&A function, and there is also the function that raise your hand that you can use to ask for the floor. The chat function is not available for the discussions. I think that this was what I wanted to say by way of a reminder. I'd just like to give the floor now to the chair of the conference, who is going to continue this conference on the second day.
Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Bonsoir. Afternoon. D'abord, je voulais féliciter les...
First of all, I would like to congratulate the elected members of this first round of elections, and I would also like to thank the conference for its faith in us. So we're going to proceed with the report of the Elections Committee, and I'd like to give the floor to the Secretariat for this, for technical information. To Catherine Thune, actually. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning to all of you. My name is Catherine Thune. I'm from the World Fellowship of Buddhists, and on behalf of the Elections Committee that I am a part of, I have the honor of presenting the results of the election for the election of the presidency of the International Conference of NGOs and the Liaison Committee, which elections that took place yesterday online. I would like to also thank the other members of the committee that helped me: Ms. Marie-Claude Allez of ATD Garde-Monde, Mr. Diego Gradis of Tradition pour Demain, Ms. Marie-Christine Gries de Soroptimist International, and Mrs. Martin Levy from the World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts. And the committee was also assisted by the Secretariat. Let me start by the presidency. There were two nominations, official members of the NGOs that are partners, and there was one seat. The number of voters, registered voters, was 147. A number of actual votes cast, 120. Number of valid votes cast, 116. Abstentions, 4. And according to the rules of procedure of the International Conference, the majority that is required is 59 votes. The details of the count is as follows. Mr. David Grosso, presented by the International Music Council, received 63 votes, and Mr. Mehdi Lalou, presented by the World Federation of Scientific Workers, received 53 votes. The majority that is required is 59, and therefore Mr. David Grosso was elected in the first round itself. So there is no need for a second round. As to the Liaison Committee, as you know, the first round's objective was to fill 3 seats corresponding to Africa, Asia, and Pacific and Western Europe regions, respectively. So the 3 regions. And just to be very brief, I will give for each of the regions only the details of the organization that has been elected, because for the other details, you may refer to the reports that have already been published on the official website of the conference. For the Africa region, 2 organizations were candidates for 1 seat to be filled. The number of registered voters 147, the number of votes cast 120, number of valid votes 113, and 7 abstentions. The African Federation for Parents, Teachers and Students, Fédération africaine des associations des parents d'élèves et étudiants, received 67 votes. For Asia Pacific region, 2 organizations were candidates, 1 seat to be filled, a number of registered voters 147, number of votes cast 120, number of valid votes 109, and number of abstentions 11. The World Organization of the Scout Movement, WOSM, was elected with 78 votes. For Western Africa and other regions, there were 20 organizations that were candidates for 1 seat. Number of registered voters 147, number of votes cast 120, number of valid votes 118, and number of abstentions 2. BPW International was declared elected with 18 votes. I would like to conclude this first report by congratulating the Secretariat to use Election Buddy as a platform, because it was a very good platform, very easy to use and perfectly transparent. The report of the Elections Committee on the election that was conducted on the 16th of December is over, and let me remind you that the Election Committee will present its final report on Friday, the 18th of December at 1 p.m. Paris time. Thank you very much. I'd like to give the floor back to the Secretariat and to the Chair to explain what is going to follow. Thank you very much. I'd like to give the floor back to Sabina Colombo now. Thank you very much. Thank you, Marie-Claude, for this report. And following the initial round of elections, and bearing in mind the elections that have already been elected for some regions, for the moment, the NGOs that have been elected to the liaison committee based on the geographical spread as BPW International for Western Europe and others, for CLADE, that is state consultation status for Latin America and the Caribbean, the Federation of Parent Teachers and Students, FAPE, for Africa, SODOPOL for Eastern Europe, and the World Organization of the Scout Movement, WOSM, for Asia Pacific. Now, the remaining seats will be distributed this time by taking into account the partnership status, that is to say, either consultative or association. And so, therefore, there are still 5 seats to be filled, 2 under association status and 3 under consultation status. So during the second round of elections, the representatives who are allowed to vote will have to express 2 preferences for association category and 3 for consultation category. And the candidates who have received the largest number of votes for each category for the seats that are to be filled, that is to say 2 on one side and 3 on the other, will be elected. The second round of election will take place on election body using the same process as yesterday from 2:30 to 6 p.m. Paris time. Before I conclude, Madam President, I would just like to remind you that if there are any associations that have a problem to vote, for instance, if they haven't received the email invitation to vote, I would like to urge them to write immediately to NGO at UNESCO.org, NGO at UNESCO.org. org. The Secretariat, along with the Election Committee, will make sure that your request is addressed quickly. NGO is the only email that is used because otherwise we cannot guarantee proper responses to emails received on other email addresses, either of the Secretariat or the Liaison Committee or via the Q&R function on Zoom. So kindly send your requests about elections to ngo at unesco.org. So thank you very much for your attention, Madam Chair. I think that this brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Sabina. Je vois qu'il y a des gens qui n'arrivent pas à se connecter à la conférence, dont notamment...
Thank you, Sabina. There are people who haven't been able to connect to this conference, mainly Professor Bondo. Well, first and foremost, I would, before we move to the thematic session, I would just like to give you a few pieces of information on the recommendations and the group that was set up yesterday. The decision has been taken amongst the NGOs. So there was a little online forum for this. And I would just like to give the floor for this to Gabrielle de Milleville for this point. Hello, can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you. For the recommendations, the NGOs who want to share their recommendations this can do so this afternoon till 8 p.m. And then we can put it all together and make a proposal tomorrow afternoon so that the recommendations can be adopted. There are certain events and certain work that was not possible to go forward with in the previous mandate, two forums, Global Citizenship and the Innovation Forum, World Peace Day, World Future Day, etc. There were quite a few things that were postponed. So up until this evening, you can send us your proposals, not later than that, so that we can collate all the information and put it all together and present it to you tomorrow afternoon. Thank you.
Donc, en fait, je vais répéter l'annonce.
Let me repeat this announcement. This has to be sent on before 6 p.m. to the Liaison Committee address. And this will be then discussed tomorrow. So thank you very much for sending the recommendations that you want to make for the ICNGO. And we will provide the email address again. I will now give the floor to Diego Gradis, who will be chairing the thematic session, Envisioning a Better and Sustainable Future, a New Paradigm for Civil Society. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be able to welcome you to this session, which is going to be the creative and intellectual part of our international conference on this theme that was selected in consultation with UNESCO. Before I give the floor to the various speakers who are announced in the agenda, I would like to remind you all that in the situation of the pandemic, which generated an unprecedented crisis since the Second World War, NGOs mobilized with UNESCO. They work in the field with the more vulnerable populations, displaced persons, victims of armed conflicts and violence. And hopefully we leave no one behind. The health crisis revealed social, economic and digital inequalities. The closing of schools showed that the poorest children could not even benefit from one meal a day. That also that unwanted pregnancies as well as violence against women markedly increased. The right to education is now threatened. More than 11 million girls may not go back to school. As far as culture is concerned, the arts are being threatened. The cultural heritage is threatened, and this is true as well for the populations in expressing their culture. And innovation for sustainable development is also being threatened. More than ever, UNESCO is fighting to safeguard the right to education, to open science and culture with its multiple partners. Civil society has a role to play in this major crisis, which is also an opportunity to rethink the way we act and interact together with UNESCO, with the member states, the national commissions, the various players in education and other stakeholders, so as to find sustainable solutions and build a better future, and a fairer future. This session aims at sharing our reflections on efficient strategies on the part of NGOs, on solidarity actions in the field, and to reinforce their coordination with the other three players in the various areas, education, culture, and science, that we're going to deal with this afternoon. These are three segments of our afternoon, which are going to be moderated by three different people that I will introduce, and they will introduce in turn each of one of their four speakers. And so you can ask questions on the Q&A. They will be dealt with either directly after each segment, culture, education, and science. They will be answered quickly because we don't have that much time, unfortunately. But then we will also maybe, if time allows, have the opportunity to have a more general discussion at the end. So I would like to introduce our keynote speaker, Professor Mve-Bondo. Professor Mve-Bondo from Gabon is a professor emeritus in philosophy in the Omar Bongo Libreville University, and also in a number of other African and European universities. He belongs to a number of science networks. He's also an observer with the Commission on Open Science at UNESCO. He's a recognized expert on university governance issues, and he cooperated with a number of regional and international and multilateral institutions, including the World Bank, UNESCO, and also the World Forum for Education from Qatar. More recently, for a number of years now, he's developed the concept of Civo Croatia, that maybe he will discuss with us. And during the COVID-19 crisis, he set up an incredible initiative called the Blue Masks. This is a place where you can federate experience, the expertise of professionals, so as to speed up development of the African continent. And this provides, they have set up a platform where online courses can be downloaded free of charge. And each week there is more than 1 million connections to that particular platform. So I would like to thank him for doing us the honor of being with us today. And dear Professor, I'll give you the floor now. Thank you. Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Why and how the men and women who we are, having met here, should we continue to fight with even more energy and selflessness than before? This is the question that I would like to ask and share with you. Why? As you know, today we live in a world where the future is increasingly uncertain, which is going through a multi-sector mega crisis, which is upsetting up all the way everything up to the foundations on which we have built. This is a world where nationalism, religion, and culture divide humankind more than ever instead of uniting it. It is a world where it has become normal to exclude the other just because he's not from my village or because he doesn't have the same religion or the same color of skin as I have. A world where force is now claiming to be reason, a chaotic world. A chaotic world which is feeding from fear and hate and despair, a world with a deficit of imagination and courage, a world without heart, and we don't even know what the price is of a human life anymore. We have reached this situation because we consider that domination of the other and greed are the only values that are desirable. Ladies and gentlemen, this mega crisis has one origin: the anti-humanistic ultraliberalism, which is responsible for pauperization of the immense majority of the people who live on this planet. It has a number of appearances. It is to try and it tries to nourish what Joseph Tonda calls the society of dazzle. It has one ambition: preventing us from thinking and living together simply and freely. But what should we do? How should we fight? My example is not necessarily the most telling, but when this crisis hit the world, and especially children in Africa with the closing of schools, I was revolted. It was impossible for me to just stand by and do nothing, because a child that doesn't go to school is a child who doesn't have a future. And therefore, with colleagues and friends, we set up a loading platform with free of charge classes for children in African schools from preschool to all the way to 12th grade. And we called this platform the Blue Masks. And this site, for a period of 3 months, had reached more than 1 million connections per week. And today we're trying to go even further. So generally speaking, I think that there are 3 fights that we have to fight in the future to change things. The first fight is to forget about all of these negative attitudes that have led to the increase of inequalities and exacerbation of hate and exclusion. This is possible if we mistrust all of those statements that aim at sowing division and hatred in our societies. The second fight is to rebuild solidarity within our societies and internationally. This means looking for local solutions to local problems, but also it means better organizing ourselves to bring common responses to our common problems, whether we're talking about climate change or pandemics. Whether I'm rich or poor, whether I'm black or white or Asian, whether I'm from here or from there, the truth is that this is our common fate. We are interdependent today more than ever. The third fight is that we have to completely rethink the conceptual and ethical framework so as to found a rainbow world, which means that we have to rethink our consumption models and production models. We have to regenerate social link and promote open science. This is the only way that we can confront our fears, to accept change, and that we can reduce inequalities and understand that science and technology cannot solve everything. And here, in order to build a better world, you, NGO representatives and leaders, you have more to offer than to ask. You have more to offer. You have a lot to offer, and this is what really makes you strong. this is part of your intrinsic qualities. The first of these qualities is your ability to put yourself in the shoes of others and to share their suffering and their joy. The second quality is your integrity. What beautiful lesson in life and the humility you give the world every day. And how many political and economic leaders could claim as much? Your third quality is your ability to work so as to give better equality to all. Your fourth quality is your ability to base your decisions around a consensus-based dialogue and therefore governing with responsibility and without any exclusion. Your last quality is your simplicity, which is based on governing by example, and which is based on a living style, which is based on the values that prevent conflicts of interest. In other words, you have to continue offering the world what you do best, namely your ability to protect society and to act for the common good. It is this sharing of values that I tried to do a number of years ago when I drafted the charter for the university deans and presidents. In order for the better world that we dream of to become true, the NGOs, ourselves, and have to help international organizations like UNESCO, the United Nations, to invite our states to deconstruct everything that might lead to nationalistic or racist and xenophobic renewals. We have to help them radically transform the way they think about their populations and not found their actions only on an economic basis. Ladies and gentlemen, on the 14th of February 1990, I had the great privilege in my university to receive Nelson Mandela 3 days after he came out of prison. And what he said to me that day when I asked him about where the world was going is something that I've never forgotten. He said, "Mr. Professor, the world is going where we are taking it. Where we, men and women of goodwill, are taking it." And I understood from that if we want a better world to come, we have to start by rejecting everything which in our practices limits and binds and debases humanity. Then we will have a new world where you will not have force but reason, where nations will no longer be condemned to fight with each other, but they will be condemned to live together. This world, ladies and gentlemen, is the world for which you work every day, and I hope that it can grow and prosper with you. I would like to thank you for your attention. Thank you very much, Mr. Professor, for this inaugural speech and lesson that you gave us, which really is very moving for us, because you very much understand the role of NGOs, the specificities, the duties and ethics of NGOs. And this is exactly what we wanted to hear when we are asking ourselves a number of questions on the theme of our conference today. And I think that you described very well what we have to base ourselves on to work together today. So thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. I would now like to introduce the first sub-theme, which is that of culture. And I will give the floor to Pierre Clavier Mabiala, who is in Congo, Brazzaville, I imagine. He's a member of the NGO UNESCO Liaison Committee. He's a comedian. He's a director. He's a cultural operator. He launched a number of initiatives in the cultural world, in particular the International Festival of Music and Arts. And he's a representative of Africa as chairman of the Arterial Network NGO in the Liaison Committee. Pierre, you have the floor. Pierre, go ahead. You have the floor. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Thank you, UNESCO, for this opportunity to meet today. I have the honor of moderating the sub-theme called Culture Stakeholders, Professionals in Creative Industries and Custodians of Knowledge and Customs are committing themselves. How will they adjust their offer of services to communication means and modes of expression that undergo so many dramatic changes? And we know that since last year, from the end of 2019 up to now, the world has been hit by COVID-19, and the cultural sector and the cultural players, of course, are very much impacted as well. So we have 4 people who are going to intervene in our panel. They present various facets of the cultural sector, and they are involved in practice, in arts, in the cultural industry, administration, and in tangible and intangible heritage. And so they, I think, will bring us some food for thought on the topic of this conference. The first person that I'm going to introduce is Mr. Brahim El Mazned. He comes from Morocco. He has more than 25 years of experience in the world of culture, in organizing major artistic encounters. Brahim is the art director of the Trimiza Festival in Agadir, which is very well known. He's the founder of Visa for Music, the Visa for Music Festival, where African and Middle East music is highly represented, and this takes place in Rabat, in Morocco. Brahim was just elected chairman of the Moroccan Association of Art Culture Association. He's also a member of the UNESCO committee that aims at promoting the 2005 Convention on the Promotion of Cultural Diversity. So Brahim is also on the guide of cultural diversity. He's one of the 100 examples of cultural development throughout the world. And this morning I discovered something about him again in a magazine where there was an article dedicated to him. So Brahim, dear Brahim, I'll give you the floor. Here you have the floor, and you can make your intervention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pierre. Good morning to you all. I'm pleased to take part in this panel. I'd like to thank all the organizers, the team which organized this forum. As everywhere else in the world, in Morocco, the culture sector was hard hit by this crisis, which is still underway. In Morocco, it started on the 16th of March. And I'd like to really greet my colleagues from Africa who were able to be resilient, even though they lost about 60% of their income for NGOs, culture sectors, all over the continent. Artists, the players in the cultural sector show their capacity to reinvent themselves and to be resilient. And this is what we've tried to do also at our own level. We maintain the team. The structure was still operating even under lockdown, but we were able to maintain our activities with some of the partners who remain faithful to us. We have spent many years to train our teams, and we need to retain the capacity and the dynamics of our office. And we also wanted to maintain our projects. We maintain Visa for Music. This edition was hailed because it proved to be resilient. There were 100 artists, 40 participants from Africa, the Middle East, during a conference of 8 conferences, several themes, both in English and French, and over 1 million viewers followed us during this event, with 0 cases of COVID-19, because the health of the participants was a priority for us. We actually respected all the sanitary rules, disinfecting the premises before the arrival of artists and so on. And we also paid the artists. We paid for their transport to Casablanca. They were housed. Accommodation was provided, and they were paid, because sometimes in case of hardship, artists are asked to invest, to pay. So they are not the ones to suffer from this crisis and produce videos. We produce videos for them. You can go on the Facebook page of Visa for Music, and you will see the videos. They are high quality videos, and we have exceeded 1 million followers of our activities, and we had more than 400 articles, interviews, etc., in the press in Morocco and abroad. And of course, with the digital means, we were able to also communicate everywhere in the world and at the level of the continent. So this resilience is so important in this time of hardship, with this crisis. Of course, we know that, digital will not replace live performance, and cultural activity should occupy the public space. We are not intending to replace live performance by digital performance. But in this time of crisis, we were able to maintain the contact, to develop projects, and to give the opportunity to artists to continue creating and sharing with their audience. We also made sure that this resilience, this continuity of activities is maintained. We have also recorded, and we have an anthology tomorrow of the Amazigh music from the south of Morocco that we registered before, but with the lockdown we had to wait before finishing the projects, the books. It's a beautiful book that can be made available free of charge to libraries in Morocco and elsewhere in the world. About 100 artists took part in this project. These are living human treasures. They are accepted to take part in this beautiful adventure. There are 2 books, 120 pages each in French, Arabic, English, and there are about 100 artists who took part. So this is an interesting project. We have also invested on a mobile stage that we want to make available to music professionals so that they can come and take up this stage in the public space in Otaïe City. This is the first stage certified in the north of Morocco. It will contribute to developing our projects, more particularly Visa for Music projects. Well, I only had 7 minutes speaking time. I can't really detail all the projects we're working on for 2021. But this crisis is unprecedented. We have suffered a lot from this crisis. Our colleagues suffered from this crisis. We hope that there is light at the end of the tunnel and that we will meet again all together. As I said earlier on, digital means will not replace the fact that we can meet. So the future of our sector is at stake. We need to meet, and this type of debate allows us to think about the future of this sector after the crisis, because this is such an in-depth crisis that we need to meet again and think together and come back stronger after this crisis. I had a short video to show. It's a teaser of the last edition of Visa for Music. It lasts 30 seconds. I don't know if we can really show it. And thank you again for this invitation.
Si tu permets, cher.
If you allow me, Pierre, there is one project which is interesting, and we're working on it today. Brahim, could you make it short? It's a project which is called Music for Sustainable Development in Morocco, which is financed by BMZ, the Ministry of Economic and Finance in Germany, for an exhibition in Maghreb. And we will start approaching 12 bands in Morocco. We try to keep the bands separate, and they will record one title each. We will work with 3 schools for musical development. We will open schools to artists. This will give the opportunity to artists to go to be in touch with schools, and there is a portal devoted to music. Thank you, Brahim, for your intervention. If there are other pieces of information, you can send them later on, and we can post them on the site. I think this will be good for the continuity of our sharing of information today. So, Without further ado, we will move on to our next speaker, Mrs. Maninette. She is from Chile. She is an actress. She took part in over 25 films for TV programs for children on different TV channels. She works on theater plays, works with universities. She was also an entity for the interpretation of audiovisual plays, and she was the vice chair of her organization, and she was also chair of the Chilean League of Actors, and in 2015 she was elected also vice chair for Latin America, for cultural diversity, and Fundación Teatro Cidade, and she was recognized by UNESCO for her work in defending cultural diversity. So I would like to give you the floor. I'm sorry if I did not pronounce some of your titles correctly because of language differences. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Pierre. Just a minute. Can you see me? You can see me?
Yes, yes. Very well.
Okay. I have, okay. Thank you very much for inviting me to this meeting to tell you a little about the cultural emergency we're experiencing due to this unprecedented pandemic that has had great impact on the cultural environments of Latin America. The measure of confinement has severely limited the capacity of creation, production, and distribution of cultural expressions in the region. In Chile, the artistic world, which had already been affected by the cancellation of the festivals and cultural events due to the social outburst of October last year, is now experiencing a major crisis with the arrival of the pandemic and the quarantine that keeps cultural centers, museums, theaters, and cinema closed, and thousands of artists will remain without income for an uncertain period of time. The arrival of the COVID-19 has produced a paralysis of the artistic world. Between 85% and 90% of the people from the cultural sectors are part of informal work without any type of social security or health protection. This precarious situation not only happens in Chile, but also in several countries of Latin America, which are also being ignored by authorities. Since the beginning of the pandemic, the Organization of the Cultural Sector requested a roundtable with the Ministry of Culture, which would allow us to face the crisis of the sector in a coordinated way, but even thought President Piñera as a low citizens' appreciation. The Ministry of Culture is going through its particular crisis due to the poor management of his minister. We're asking for the resignation of the minister. However, she continues in office without listening to us. The seriousness of the crisis, far from being contained by the state, was aggravated by the absence of an emergency plan. At present, some countries in Latin America are still facing a very unstable health situation, while others are beginning to recovery process that promises to be long and difficult for the creative community. The crisis also led to abuse and violation of cultural rights and freedoms, finally creating a very paradoxical situation while creators and professionals in the sector have found themselves in a dramatic situation. The giants of the web have obtained enormous benefits from the dissemination of cultural content online. In Paraguay, where everything has been closed for months, the entire country was affected by these problems. Several civil society organizations have had to propose different actions to help the socio-economic situation. But after 8 months of cultural closure, they are still in a precarious and extremely vulnerable situation with the closure of cultural spaces. In Bolivia, There's a great discrimination with the foreign artists. Therefore, the mobility of the artists doesn't exist. There are no public policies. There's a lack of protection for culture. In Brazil, culture has been in a state of emergency for a long time, even before the COVID-19. And today, despite the pandemic, the cultural sector seeks to reactivate the national culture plan and thus be able to recover what has been lost. In Chile, we requested that the culture budget will be 1%. Nevertheless, we continue with a 0.4%, and the budget for the year 2021 was cut at 25% in Paraguay, and a similar situation happens in Chile. In Mexico, they also asked for a law that favors artistic creation, and in Argentina, the unemployment is awful. We think that UNESCO could take a much more active role in Latin America. It could be the space that collaborates in the articulation of the world of culture to promote strategies that encourage local cultural expressions and to promote short and long-term policies, because at the bottom, the situation is social insecurity. The crisis we are witnessing in Latin America is of enormous depth. It is not only a question of social demands, wage, health, and so on, but also the inability of the political system to warn and process the demands in an adequate and timely manner. Thank you very, very much. Thank you for inviting me.
Merci.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mani. Thank you for having shared your thoughts with us. Thank you for your intervention. My heartfelt thanks. Now I have Celia Fischer from Germany, from the International Music Council in 1993, and she was appointed Secretary General in 2009. She's in charge of cultural policies, relationship with members, fund collection, and she ensures the liaison with UNESCO Secretariat and the diplomatic representation of member states at UNESCO. As Secretary General of the International Music Council, she published several articles for music magazines. She made several speeches and made presentations during conferences in Africa, in Asia, in the Arab world, in Europe, and the Americas. Celia believes in strategic cooperation and efficient advocacy. And of course, we meet in some task force, working groups, discussing issues like environment, sustainable development, and so on. Celia, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Pierre. Merci pour ces mots gentils aussi.
Thank you very much, Pierre. Thank you for these very kind words. I hope you don't mind if I begin my intervention by thanking colleagues who expressed their gratitude to the candidate nominated by the International Music Council, Mr. David Grosso. Thank you very much.
Grazie mille. The response of the International Music Council to the pandemic was naturally driven by our intimate belief that the experience of music and music making is a vital part of the everyday life of all people. IMC's values are embedded in the 5 music rights, which revolve around the themes of freedom of musical expression, music education for all, access to musical involvement, artistic development and communication, and recognition of and fair remuneration for artists' works. This year, for us, the question has been, how can we make sure that these rights continue to be respected during and in the aftermath of crisis? Our response reflected the three pillars on which our work is based: as a value-driven organization, as a network of networks, and as a project organization. The 5 music rights in times of crisis was at the heart of a debate organized by IMC in the framework of the UNESCO Resilient movement. We invited our music rights champions to offer their views on this matter and discuss with the UNESCO ADG for Culture possible avenues to efficiently advocate for cultural policies and funding mechanisms that put our shared values in the heart of the COVID-19 response. As a value-driven organization, we are also alerted by reports from colleagues all over the world pointing to attacks on freedom of musical expression that are exacerbated by the pandemic as global nationalist populism continues to restrict expressions and emergency procedures are enacted, which sometimes serve as a mobile to silence dissident voices. In the course of this year, IMC issued or co-signed a number of statements or letters calling upon several governments to cease political harassment and police violence targeting musicians and music professionals. As member of the Culture 2030 Goal campaign, IMC co-sponsored a statement calling upon governments and other decision makers to take immediate actions to ensure that culture is at the heart of the response to the pandemic. We asked governments to support all those who belong to the music ecosystem and whose livelihoods and work are threatened. We just heard it from Brahim and from Mane. Back in May and still today, we strongly believe that every euro, every dollar, every peso that is not invested now will cost so much more after the crisis when trying to rebuild musical infrastructures. And in some cases, this will not even be possible. En tant que réseau de réseaux qui englobe plus de 1000 organisations.
As a network of networks that encompasses more than 1,000 organizations, we have focused our efforts to make our members independent during the COVID-19 crisis. We conducted a survey to assess the impact of the crisis right at the outset. We created our site and our resource center that took the necessary measures throughout the world. We organized lounges at regional levels for our members in Africa, Latin America, the Caribbean, Asia, and Europe. We offered a special lounge for members of international organizations, given that they share the same challenges as we do. We were not able to welcome. For those we were not able to welcome in our lounges, we offered personal interviews and meetings. Our regional ambassador for the Arab world gathered video messages on solidarity coming from different members of the region that we published. This response to our members and their needs was supported by the need to show solidarity. We are all in this together. As an organizer that is a project-based organization, we had to adapt our modus operandi. Our main project for the promotion of musical creation had to be cancelled and postponed to 2021. Another project on the development of training tools meant for cultural networks. For this project, the research was done and a lot of meetings with partners were conducted online. Just like all of you, we were able to learn how to use many applications and software that made our virtual action more simple, more inclusive, and it also led to a few frustrations, and we had a few laughs about these things as well. And these laughs are so important, particularly in current times. Thank you very much. Thank you for this intervention, indeed, which was really very good. And we will now continue. We would like to give the floor to the last intervention of our panel on culture, We are going to now listen to Madam Yun Suk Jang. I'm so sorry, says the moderator, for the pronunciation of your noun, of your name. Sorry, but Madam Yun Suk Jang, you have continued your academic objectives, World Cultural Heritage Management. And your organization is a program specialist since 2018, and you have launched a lot of different programs and activities linked with safeguarding intangible cultural heritage and the extension of network in Asia-Pacific region, including for precisely intangible cultural heritage. And you are in the Living Heritage Project, which is part of the Silk Road program, and ever since the outset, and this has contributed to showcasing intangible cultural heritage. You're a program specialist in the training center on intangible world heritage in the Asia-Pacific region, ICHCAB, which is a Category 2 center under the auspices of UNESCO. Once again, I beg for your indulgence because I haven't pronounced your name correctly, but you have the floor. Over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Yeon-seok Jang, and I am the program specialist working at the Strategic Development Office of ICCAP. IC's safeguarding activity always reflects circumstance, contemporary issue, and problem, so that the strategy and the way of action always facing on challenge. In this aspect, I think NGOs plays on key role in approaching a sustainable future in a new paradigm for civil society, and its significant role has emphasized on UNESCO 2000 Convention. I'm pleased to have this floor and would like to share information about ICCAP's collaboration with NGO and how we seeking of it continuously. ICCAP was approved as a UNESCO Category 2 center in 2009, and among 7 different ICH-related C2 centers, it can make an effort to safeguarding ICH in Asia-Pacific region. For this, we are working with the 2 key functions. These are ICH information sharing and networking with various stakeholders in the region. Over the last decade, we have conducted more than 200 projects with 48 member states, and it including 85 cases in information sharing and 67 cases in networking projects. As you can see on the screen, we are collaborated 130,000 resources material in total, and at the same time, we also build a huge network of ICH stakeholders, and it can be seen that NGOs are consist as big ratio, which means it considered as important networking partners. In detail, we published a book in collaboration with NGOs to highlight their activities. As a showcase of NGO stories, this book represents a reflection of the 2003 convention in actual activity and how ICH can contribute to achieving SDGs. In this year, we got the third outcome. It focused on the relationship between ICH and SDG 2, Zero Hunger, through NGO's project on food security. In addition, Living Heritage series is the one of the representative publication of ICCAP. It introduced ICH element on regional transmission to raise the visibility of cultural diversity emphasized by UNESCO. Last year, we published the traditional food collaborative with ICH NGO forums, Heritage Alive, and hold event in Colombia. As a part of our networking rule, ICCAP create venues that help stakeholders, government, NGO to meet and to discuss matter relation to ICH safeguarding. In this year, we started a webinar during the pandemic situation, and we had ICH NGO conference through the line. The theme was ICH and resilience in crisis to build mutual cooperation system for NGO network. By reflecting the digital era, we also preparing a significant project which called ICH Links. It's going to open source online information sharing platform. It served as active cultural exchange in various stakeholders through the platform. It's free to use, open resource, active communication, and networking with all. As you can see on the screen, we are building a prototype and developing a straightforward design for easy use. We also seeking wise partnership in order to create active networking. ICCAP published the ICH Create and in newsletter to promote ICH visibility. So we always welcome to hear from the field and deliver news of NGOs. I hope my presentation will be a key to open the wider and fruitful cooperation network with NGOs. ICCAP would like to act as a platform for communication with NGOs to safeguarding ICH. Thank you so much for your attention.
Merci beaucoup. Merci, Madame.
Thank you very much, Madam, for your intervention. Thank you very much for enabling us to understand a few important issues. So this brings us to the discussion, but we don't really have any questions. But I wanted to ask a question to all those who have taken the floor in this panel. I would like to know very briefly, just in 1 minute, if you can tell us something about the following. Well, we all know that the COVID-19 pandemic has given rise to major upheavals in our day-to-day lives and our practices. What do you think will the future look like with this new landscape? Any measures? What have you been doing so far? You have adapted to the new situation, to the new difficulties, and then with all the new possibilities that you have used to be able to resist. So what, according to you, is going to be the future with everything that we have gone through and experienced so far? If you have just 1 minute or 1 or 2 minutes, you can perhaps give us your views on this. Brahim, why don't you start? Well, you have just given us 1 minute each, so that's going to be difficult. But I think the largest crisis worldwide has been overcome thanks to culture, whether we're talking about all the large crises, actually, economic crisis, financial crisis, with all the projects, with New Deal, with Roosevelt, following the Second World War, or even to the crisis in the Balkans. All these crises have been overcome and surmounted thanks to culture. And that is why I really think that we need to prioritize culture in our programs, because all the NGOs and all the creative industries do have the capacity to reinvent themselves. And I think that even amongst each other, amongst colleagues, we should be able to show resilience, build networks, and continue working together. We have to be more mobile, more agile, and we need to show solidarity and stick together. And if we do that, I think we will be able to do a lot. And very soon, this crisis will be behind us from 2021 onwards. But I do hope that governments will indeed focus on culture when prioritizing future projects. Thank you. Madam Magny, would you like to say something?
Situation very difficult, and we hope the next year the president can go home and we can elect the new one that can help us in all the pandemic that is very, very difficult to live actually in Chile.
Merci beaucoup. Celia?
Celia, well, as far as the pandemic goes, the status of the artist has become extremely fragile. It's very, very vulnerable. And this is not something directly connected to the crisis per se, because it preceded the crisis. The situation has only exacerbated the status of artists. So we really need to show solidarity. We need to make governments accountable. And where legislation is lacking to give a proper legal status to artists, this needs to be remedied. As to the digital divide that I mentioned, once again, even in this respect, we have to be very cautious because, as Ibrahim mentioned, we keep talking about what the digital technologies have to offer. But if we continue to have this digital divide, both on the side of the artists and their audiences, if they're deprived of internet access, they will not be able to exploit this potential. So I would just like to end on a positive note by saying that at least in Europe, we have managed to increase the budget by 1 billion euros. I'm talking about the cultural project of the European Union. So instead of 1.4 billion for culture, we are going to have 2.4 billion euros for the European Union for the 7 years to come. Thank you. Thank you very much. Excellent news.
Yoon Suk.
It's my turn. Okay, I think crisis always open the new alternative ways, and ICT safeguarding activity also always reflect the new environment and the contemporary issue. And the COVID-19 pandemic is one of the things that we should have to challenge. So this kind of issues always make alternative way. And in case of the HCAP, we normally create venues that help stakeholders and every government and NGOs, and we meet and to discuss matter related to ICT safeguarding every year. But in this year, during the pandemic issue, we create another new project which called ICH webinar series. And also so through these new ways, we try to make a more the active communication with various stakeholders. I think this kind of way is this is the way that we try to solve these issues in our center. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Thank you Brahim. Thank you, Ms. Mane. Thank you, Celia. Thank you, Yunsuk. I will now give the floor to somebody else, to another moderator. What I keep in mind in your interventions is, okay, we were impacted, but the cultural sector managed to resist to a number of things, because of course you have people in the sector who demonstrated some of the ways that we can get out of the crisis. But I think it's also a question of solidarity. We have to have more solidarity, more cooperation, and I think it would be a good thing. Let me give you an example. In some African countries, artists were used to make people aware of the situation, to educate the population when the COVID-19 crisis started. But unfortunately, when we came out of lockdown, it was the sector that remained under lockdown. So, but we need this particular sector, of course, to be able to see things differently. So thank you to all of you, and thank you for your trust. Thank you very much, Pierre, and thank you to all four of you, and thank you specifically to Mane, who had to get up very early, and thank you to Sunyu, who's going to go to bed very, very late to be with us today. Okay, so we're now moving on to the second theme, the second sub-theme on education, which is going to be co-chaired by our chairperson, Marie-Claude Machon-Honoré, and Ilie Vantlan is going to co-chair this session. Ilie is the Secretary General of the International Association of Universities, and she represents this association in a number of expert committees, among the very many things that she does with the Council of Europe, the UN, and UNESCO. And as far as Marie-Claude is concerned, I don't think it is necessary at this stage to introduce her again. She's an academic in a number of sectors, and she's also an activist in defending gender issues. Thank you very much, Diego. I defend gender issues, but also the right to education. So thank you very much to Iliji to have agreed to be the moderator for this panel, which is very dear to my heart, as you know. I would also like to thank the members, the member of the coordination group, Mr. Chakroun, who accepted to be a panelist in this session on the key role of education for the good of humankind and our future. He was invited at the General Assembly of the World Alliance for Literacy in the context of learning, of lifelong learning. And I took the floor at that time in September 2019 on behalf of the Liaison Committee on the need to recognize the crucial role of civil society organization in the implementation of literacy programs. And this was actually, again, taken up in the report prepared by UNESCO on the issue of reinforcing partnerships for literacy in the context of the UNESCO strategic project.
Secretary General of the International Association of Universities, and also member of the Consultative Committee for the Futures of Education. And we know how important it has become to rethink education for a more equitable and sustainable future and for non-violence and peace. And this is why I also invited the different panelists, Victoria, Christian, and Alexandre, to show that this panel is inclusive and holistic, taking into account the key role of education as a continuum from early childhood to tertiary levels and higher studies, in the perspective also of lifelong learning and training. I wish you all a great session and fruitful debate. Thank you very much, Iliji, and thank you, everyone. Now I can see you. Hello. Victoria, Alexandre, Mr. Chakroun, and Christian, I can't see him. Okay. The floor is yours, Iliji. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here. Merci beaucoup, Marie-Claude, de me passer la parole.
So thank you very much, Marie-Claude, for giving me the floor. It's also very interesting to take the floor after the panel that has just been concluded now with another topic very dear to my heart, namely culture, music, all of these parts of our lives that make our lives beautiful and that are very, very important. And it's very important that we make sure that they are going to have a future and that the future is much more open so that we can, again, go to the theater, go listen to a concert, and facilitate the life of all of these artists who are suffering terribly throughout the world today. So that was very important. Thank you very much.
Envisaging a more sustainable and better future and how civil society can contribute to it, it's important to have this second session today. And I would like to start, though, by congratulating the organizers for this conference and a first very successful day yesterday online. And we know the challenges, even if we start to all become kind of experts in the organizing of events online, it remains a challenge. And so congratulations on that. As well, congratulations on the elections committee and on how the elections were conducted, because it worked and you managed. Very pleased to see the results already today, and congratulations to those who have been elected so far. Special thanks as well to Professor Bonaventure M.V. Bondo for his very inspiring speech. I think you set the tone for this day today, and many of the points that you raised have been taken already in the first subsection and the debate that precedes, and it will be taken up here again. As far as I'm concerned, I'm very pleased to have been invited to chair this important session and thank the organizers for the debates as orchestrated. I'm the Secretary General of the International Association of Universities that was called into life by UNESCO on 9 December 1950. You will see the date is telling for everyone, as it was last week, that we could celebrate 70 years of international higher education cooperation. And we were pleased to welcome dignitaries from UNESCO, and in particular, Stefania Giannini, the ADG Education, to address the higher education community, and to welcome a message as well from David Achoarena, the director of UIL, the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning, with whom many on the panel this afternoon are certainly very strongly connected. We also welcomed some 500 higher education leaders and experts in higher education from around the world to debate with us the past, the present, and how to move into the future. 4 initiatives that we're involved in and of interest to this debate are, and you mentioned it, Marie-Claude, already, is the Futures of Education initiative, in which we're involved as member of the advisory board. As well, we very strongly support the Global Coalition for Education, which is another powerful platform that UNESCO has called into life to mobilize many actors around the world to make sure that education has a future, even today. Then IAU is also very strongly involved in a global study on the future of lifelong learning, and this time how lifelong learning is being conducted through higher education. That may be of interest later if we have a bit of time for a small discussion. And the last point I would like to raise here is what we as IAU try to do to also enhance the possibility of the education sector to survive, to continue to strive, and to offer the kind of quality of education that we need, not only in Europe, but in Africa, in the Arab world, in Asia, in Latin America, in the Americas in general, in all around the world. So we've started with a webinar series on the future of higher education. We carried out a global survey on the impacts of COVID-19 on higher education. A first report is out. A second global survey will be carried out early in 2021 to look at medium-term impacts of COVID-19 on higher education, and also the links to all the other education sectors. So the pre-primary, primary, and basic education and lifelong learning. Then we also offer a portal, and I saw that The International Council of Music has done the same, and others. And I believe that that is a very powerful tool for us as NGOs to support the activities that are being carried out. Today, I will be very pleased in a minute to give the floor to 4 eminent speakers who each will have only 5 minutes to speak. But then I am sure we can connect with them later as well, as they have so much to contribute to the kind of dialogues that we have today. The 4 speakers will be Monsieur Boren Chakroun, who's the directeur de la division pour les politiques et les systèmes d'apprentissage tout au long de la vie au secteur de l'éducation de l'UNESCO. Ensuite, ce sera
So we're going to have first Mr. Borhin Chakroun, Director of the Division for Policies and Lifelong Learning Systems within the Education sector of UNESCO. Then we're going to have Mrs. Victoria Ebiwoye, Director of the One African Child Foundation for Creative Learning from Nigeria. Then we'll be listening to Mr. Alexander Genoye, President of the World Committee for Lifelong Learning, and Mr. Christian Renou, will be taking the floor afterwards. He's a member of the Executive Committee of the International Movement for Reconciliation, I4, and President of the French Coordination for Education in Nonviolence and Peace.
The little that I received on the presentations that you all 4 will make actually resonate with one another. I see as a backdrop the strategic Agenda 2030, transforming our world, and we have a decade in front of us. Yes, it started in 2020. It was rocked a lot, but we can certainly look into the future together and see to what end, or how much we will be able to do together to achieve the goals as set. The second backdrop is that the education is the most powerful tool that we have at our disposal to transform the world in which we need to live, and the kind of world that we need to create together. There is a need to foster quality education from pre-primary to lifelong learning, including through higher education, and including online and face-to-face. These are 2 dynamics and not the same side of one coin. They're not even 2 sides of one coin. They're very different aspects of education. And there we need to look at not only offering education, but quality education. Professor M.V. Bondo reminded us that the digital transformation of education remains a means to an end, and certainly not the end in itself. So let's see how you in this panel can address that very important challenge as well. The second backdrop today, and everybody has said so, is the multi-sectoral COVID-19 crisis, the impacts of COVID-19 on all the levels of education, the education emergency and the need to ensure quality education for all, online and face-to-face, and now, and the need to foster value-based education and a culture of democracy, non-violence, and respect. So quite an agenda, and I'm very pleased to herewith already move to you, Boren Chakroun, and very pleased to welcome your expertise to the table. The floor is yours.
Merci Helge, ça me fait plaisir.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be able to see you. And also, I would like to thank the organizers for having invited me. Out of the 5 minutes that were given to me, I have decided to talk more specifically about the right to education and put it in the context of what we're currently experiencing, and in the context of the discussions that took place just before, but also in that were reflected in your introduction, which gives us a background, a context. I'm going to speak English and also in French, but I'm going to say specifically what we are trying to do now with regards to the right to education and why it is important that we look at this with a perspective that takes into account the COVID crisis, but also the changes in our context, the digital economy, climate change issues, for instance, and specifically SDG 4, where we have to look at the opportunity of offering to everyone the opportunity of learning throughout their lives, lifelong learning.
The right to education is in the core of the SDG 4 agenda and the Education 2030. through the equity and quality dimension, and also the lifelong learning perspective. We are celebrating, and we just celebrated, and we will continue celebrating for the next few weeks, the 60th anniversary of the 1960 Convention on the Right to Education. Obviously, after 60 years, the question is this convention, is the right to education as our founding fathers and mothers adopted, is still current and valid, or should we look at it from maybe a new perspective? And that's why we have adopted 5 building blocks for the campaign around the 60th anniversary. The first one is that we think that the right to education has been has been challenged during the COVID, and that discrimination is no longer discrimination in terms of access to school. It's also discrimination in terms of access to remote learning, be it high-tech, low-tech, or no-tech remote learning. So we need to think about the discrimination not only with the eyes of 1960. Is digital, is connectivity. It can be also, and some of the colleagues were speaking about the cultural, about climate change. It can be also people who are affected by climate change and what we are calling now climate change refugees. It can be also adults who are low-skilled or illiterate, and Marie-Claude was referring to that. But also senior persons. And looking at, for example, the new lifelong learning policy from Japan, the attention is not only about active population, but also about the elders and how they continue learning and lifelong learning, not only for work, not only for economic, it's also for life. And that's part also of the humanistic perspective that we need to take. So we decided to focus on 5 building blocks, and I will focus in details on the last one. We want to make the right to education better known. We have only 100 countries who have ratified the convention. We still have half of the member states almost that didn't ratify the convention on the right to education. It's important that we actively advocate for it. Second, we need to better monitor. Every day, unfortunately, the right to education is being challenged. Just last weekend in Nigeria, you have heard about the news about the rape of more than 100 young learners. We need to make it better monitored. In some countries, the still minorities do not have access to education in their mother tongue. In some countries, if you are different from an ethnic perspective, if you are a disabled person, you still have difficulty to access to the right to education. We would like also to support countries that decide to implement the right to education to do it. And we have developed a wide range of tools, guidelines, resources, capacity development program to ensure that the right-based perspective is rooted in any education policy and in any policy related to learning more broadly. We would like to ensure that the convention, and that's part of this campaign that we launched. That's part of my intervention today, but it's you who are participating in such type of event, and in particular civil society, which is a vibrant actor in many countries all over the world. Even when there is a weak state, weak institutional capacities in the education system, the civil society is vibrant. And it's very important that the civil society play that role of mobilizing to adhere to the right to education. The last point is making evolve. And I would like to take a few minutes on that if the chair will allow me.
Not a few minutes, just one if you can.
Okay, that's one. So to make it evolve is meaning to take into account what we have learned from the COVID crisis. Of course, the technology is not an end in itself, but technology today determines if you have access to learning or not. So we cannot afford that 500 million learners do not have access to technology, to internet. It's important that we ensure the right to digital inclusion and the right to connectivity for learners as part of the rights. it's important that we consider seriously the right to lifelong learning entitlements. And some countries, like in France, like in Singapore, like in Korea, the right to lifelong learning is becoming part of the right to education. And it's very important to take that into account. Maybe the last piece is that we tend to neglect the early child learning. And yesterday we had a very important meeting. It's very important. We know that learning starts early. And when you miss at early learning, you can jeopardize future learning and life and work. So it's important to keep also and to bring early child education as part of the right to lifelong learning. Last is that the climate change is affecting every corner of our life, of the economies of societies. We need to protect learners in this context. And it's very important that we take this into account as well to avoid and to avoid further exacerbating the inequalities worldwide, within and across countries all over the world. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak, and I hope this meets the expectation. Thank you.
It certainly does. Thank you very much, Warren. And I think you raise a very important point, the 60th anniversary of a very important convention on the right to education. And it is sad to hear that only so few countries have ratified it so far. So the IU would like to offer support where we can. Obviously, we don't work on all the levels of education, but we can at least help advocate. And I'm sure the others will do the same, but I'm very pleased here to give the floor to Madame Victoria Ibo-Woi, who's the director of the One African Child Foundation in Nigeria. So the floor is yours, Victoria.
Thank you, Ms. Sylvie. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this panel. I am so happy to be here today to discuss an issue that is so dear to my heart, which is the right to education. I know that everyone here today, we are all here to talk about education. And when we talk about education, we do so not as individual, but as a global community. We also do so because each and every one of us know from our own life or from the life of someone, like our friends and relatives, that education saves lives and it changes story. My own journey through school is a living example of why we must invest in education and why we must keep pushing for the right to education, particularly for the out-of-school children. I'm very fortunate to receive an education, but I also struggled through school. I struggled with a learning difficulty, and that really affected my self-esteem. I remember that going through the university, majority of the things that I learned and skills that I still have today were not just things that I learned at school, but also after school programs that were funded or made possible by NGOs. These programs improved my self-esteem. It also increased my awareness of my surroundings, and it also equipped me with skills to take action. By joining several youth-led organizations and volunteering at the university, I learned, that I can do something as a young person. I don't have to wait until I'm old before I start to make a difference. And that was why I established One African Child in Nigeria. A lot of our programs are centered around, as Mr. Chakran said, they are centered around lifelong learning. They are centered around having a holistic perspective to education. I believe that the right to education shouldn't be limited to just sending children to school. It should be about preparing them to be holistic, responsible and active citizens. And when we talk about that, education can be considered from different dimensions. We can look at the social aspects, the emotional aspects, the ethical aspect of education, and the academic aspect of education. We can also look at different thematics in education. There is girls' education, there is peace education, environmental education, education for sustainable development, and equipping learners with 21st century skills. We can also look at factors that make education, sustainable, such as if a child doesn't have adequate food to eat or good health services, they can't really pay attention to education, right? And I think that is why we have different NGOs working to address different issues. One African Child, as a youth-led organization, what we do is to particularly focus on the different areas that affect young people's education. And we do that through youth consultation. We come together from time to time, bringing together young people to talk about issues that they care about. Even though they care so much about education, you might find that other external issues might be affecting how much they can invest in education. Not only do we do youth consultation, we also, during the pandemic, we've seen how in Nigeria in particular, learners were not able to receive education for almost half a year, for almost 6 months. And what we have been doing is that even though technology can bridge the gap, there are also disconnected communities where technology isn't exactly the solution, or it's not even sustainable in communities that don't have access to data or electricity. What we did as an organization during this period is to reimagine how to make education accessible and equitable to these communities. And we started creating knowledge products that could potentially be, printed and distributed to this community lacking access to education. Another core part of our program
indirectly with what you are doing and your activities at the global level. And it is interesting to see what the United Nations is doing, UNODC in particular, which is the UN Office against drugs and crime, and which also addresses the issue of violence and its broad definition. It has its head office in Vienna, and it's an interesting link with the work that you're doing. There are a few people who have written something in the chat, which is the importance of lifelong learning and also the mobilization of youth for youth, as well as a system outside of school for the promotion of these values. Would you like to emphasize something in this respect so that we can understand how you intend to promote lifelong education in the different fields of expertise in the non-formal sector outside of school? And secondly, how would you make sure that youth have a better place in our societies, both in the formal and informal sector, and how we should avoid being afraid of youth and, on the contrary, take them on board so that we include them in our activities.
Time, but please, if you could highlight one point or two on how to actually foster lifelong learning also outside of the formal system. And second, how to ensure or how to mobilize better power to young people where there is, on the contrary, too often a kind of reluctance to give them the floor and a kind of fear that they will not go in the right direction if not directed from above. So if I can start, I will give the floor in the order of presentations, and 1 minute if you can. Boren, if I can give you the floor, everybody can open the videos again so we all are on the screen. Boren Chakroun, êtes-vous avec nous? Oui. Je ne vois pas. Boren, je ne sais pas si vous êtes avec nous.
Boren, are you with us?
Ibiwoye, if you would be able to respond to the questions that were asked by the participants, in particular, the participation of young people and how to better connect the formal, non-formal. 1 minute.
Yeah, thank you, Vivian. I think that the process of engagement really does matter. A lot of young people are willing to share, but also to learn. I don't think that as young people, we feel that we know it all or that other people don't understand us. The process of engagement should be about dialogue. It shouldn't be so much too structured or too formal. I do think that there is an opportunity for like intergenerational dialogue where we can learn from those who have gone ahead of us. Many of the speakers on this panel have decades of experience that I don't have. So I've been able to learn a lot. And at the same time, I can also share my own experience so that they can also learn as well. I think that the process of engagement really does matter. It should be more about dialogue, and it should be structured in a way that is meaningful, and there can be cross-cultural learning.
Thank you. Est-ce que Monsieur Ginoyer, je peux vous...
Mr. Ginoyer, over to you. Alexandre Ginoyer, would you kindly turn on your microphone first? Thank you. Well, hi again. Well, I believe that we should have a different approach to youth. Currently, our approach is very vertical. It's as if knowledge holders are talking to those who have no knowledge. And I think this is the first mistake. We have to stop this vertical approach to addressing young people and their issues, because young people also have knowledge to share. And in any case, knowledge is just one click away for most people. So I think that we really need to change how we engage with young people, how we include them, how we interact with them. Because, there's no such thing as pure learners anymore, because, learners are also people who share their own knowledge and vice versa. So there is a two-way flow of knowledge now, and this requires an entirely different approach. And just to conclude, I would just like to come back on the other areas where this kind of work can be carried out. I think we need to look for different forums for action, different platforms, so that everyone, young people, old people come from different horizons, different disciplines, etc., they all can come together to serve a common cause which transcends differences. And this could mean involving young people in every way possible, using every platform possible. And this also means not remaining in the purely academic realm. It could be by fostering dialogue. It could be by raising questions and answering the questions. So every situation offers something that we can learn, and every situation needs to be leveraged in order to work towards a better future together. Thank you.
And to really make a strong plea for the arts to be one entry point into better learning. I think this also speaks to what Victoria was trying to convey, or was conveying, in that the notion of dialogue with the emphasis on dia between people at equal level. And that is also what you're saying there. Je vais redonner la parole à Monsieur Renou. Aussi, nous avons une minute.
I'd like to give the floor now to Mr. Christian Renou for just 1 minute again, just 1 minute. Thank you. Mr. Renou, you have the floor. Thank you very much. Yeah, I would just like to pick up on your remark about the different links between the UN system. There's a lot of work carried out at the WHO as well, as far as violence is concerned, because it is a public health issue after all. And so there is quite a bit of work done at the WHO. And of course, there's UNICEF and there are other UN agencies as well involved in this sector. Well, to come back to lifelong learning, as I was saying, that education for nonviolence develops psychological and social skills, and these skills are to be developed all through life, actually. I mean, there's no end to such knowledge and such learning, especially when it comes to a culture of nonviolence. So there is a link between the two. And today, there are different training sessions available for young people, for adults, outside of schools. But education and schools have to take on board this dimension as well, because the school is an important place where young people discover these values, and it is very important for them. It is therefore important to use schools as well to develop these skills. Now, education for nonviolence and for peace need to help young people to develop the skills they need to apply these values and to grow with them. And this also means respect. It also means collaboration. And the trainer should learn alongside the young, and together they can develop these skills. Okay, thank you very much. I think that we have a lot of food for thought here, and I'm sure that we can continue this conversation for a very long time to come. But we have to end our session now, and thank you very much for having participated in this session. And I think that it has really focused on some very important issues and the joint initiatives that can be taken in 2021 by all the NGOs. And we will come back to the liaison committee with the new team that is in place, and I'm sure it is eager to work on all these aspects together. Hopefully this whole idea will gather momentum. So I would just like to give the floor back to Mr. Gradis. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Olivier, for having conducted these discussions. Once again, we're extremely frustrated to have to cut short the conversation on such important themes. But it was very interesting to see the different approaches and the complementarity between our different panelists, because as you can see, we can address this issue from different angles and different perspectives. So thank you very much, Olivier, for having moderated this very important theme. Now we will go to the last sub-theme of the day. Now, of course, communication is the fourth pillar of UNESCO, but we'd put that aside for another international conference because unfortunately we don't have the time to address all these issues. So we decided to focus on cultural education and science. So let's move to the sub-theme of science, and the moderator of this theme will be Andrei Tchechev. Andrei is a member of the liaison committee as well, and he's the director of the non-governmental ecological foundation Bernatsky in Moscow. And he is in particular in charge of programs and projects in the field of education for sustainable development. And within the liaison committee, he has worked particularly on climate issues. So, Andrei, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Diego, for presenting me, and good afternoon, everyone. And first of all, I would like to say that I am really privileged to be here and also to chair the panel, which is called The Social Responsibility of Science, Researchers and Engineers Towards Future Generations. What role of innovation and technology for the common good? What relevance for open science and scientific diplomacy? This is really a very burning and very topical issue here, I'd say, because our science is a continuation of education for all and culture, and actually all other very necessary aspects like gender equality, like human rights and combating poverty. And science, namely, is a tool actually that would, and mechanism that not only could, but also should help us overcome the COVID-19 pandemic, and also to achieve and to fulfill all SDGs in the Agenda 2030. And I have a special honor to present you very deeply esteemed panelists and three speakers here on the panel. And I'm not going to be very talkative and matter of factly, let me just present you Ms. Peggy Oti-Boateng, Director of the Division of Science Policy and Capacity Building within the Natural Sciences sector of UNESCO, which will tell us about importance of science and scientific issues just to be here on the agenda. Ms. Oti-Boateng, the floor is yours. Excuse me, I can't hear you. Could you please unmute your mic? Unmute your mic.
Can you hear us, Mrs. Oti-Boateng? We cannot hear you. Make sure your microphone is on. We cannot hear you at all, so it's a problem from your device because you're unmute on Zoom.
Okay.
Fortunately, it's still not working.
No sound going because of some major glitches with the connection, maybe, or the mic. Okay.
Unfortunately, I didn't get to test Mrs. Oti-Boateng earlier, so maybe we can skip to the next person.
Okay, Ms. Oti-Boateng, I hope that the technical crew now will try to fix the glitch with their audibility, and I'm sorry for that, and let us switch to the first speaker, which is Ms. Dina Bakaleshi, if I'm right to pronounce your family name. And Ms. Bakaleshi is a member of the Executive Council of the World Federation of Scientific Workers and Research Engineering, Classical Philology, History of Medicine, and Digital Humanities at le Centre National Recherche Scientifique, France. Okay, and I know that you're going to share with us very interesting things, actually, and some issues that might be then some food for thought for those who would like to coin synergy and to achieve the overall SDGs and to continue working in cooperation, actually uniting all the mankind here. Okay, the floor is yours, please.
Yes, thank you. I will speak in French. La Fédération mondiale des
The World Federation of Scientific Workers is very pleased to be participating in this international conference in a context where the whole of mankind is fighting the pandemic. NGOs have a double and demanding role to play. They have to mobilize civil society, but they also have to talk to governments. Since its creation in 1946 by a number of eminent scientists, our federation has been very much aware of the responsibility of scientists to society. But even though scientists are ready to take on this responsibility, it is up to our governments to make sure that our peoples get out of the semi-darkness which was created by dangerous management of the pandemic. Science on its own cannot solve all of the inequalities that the pandemic exacerbated, but without scientific expertise, the risk is for the conspiracy theories to prosper. And for scientific culture to experience a number of setbacks. We are very pleased to see today that civil society and scientific community are being mobilized together for science as a common good for mankind, as it appears in the UNESCO recommendation on science and researchers. The motto is no profits from the pandemic. The European Citizens Initiative, Right to Cure, the People's Vaccine Alliance, and the initiative by South Africa as well as India with the WTO, supported by 400 organizations, demand beyond opening scientific data, also opening that of intellectual property for vaccines and anti-COVID treatments. So this is one more reason to support the recommendation process for open science at UNESCO. We see that there would be several elements of progress there. Open science would be founded on cooperation and sharing and not on competition. It would promote the use of several languages and bibliodiversity. It will make knowledge more democratic. It will broaden knowledge by including that of indigenous people. It will be robust and sustainable because it's going to be financed by public investment. However, we still have a lot to do in order to translate scientific progress into well-being and prosperity. There's always the risk that the southern countries be mere consumers when actually it should be on an equal footing with the northern part of the globe. Bridging the digital divide, which cruelly redeveloped during lockdowns has to be accompanied with a fight against fuel poverty that a number of researchers, teachers, or students have to face. Open science is incompatible with business confidentiality, which places public research in an inferior position. Today, we have mainly private companies developing anti-COVID vaccines, but they base their work on patient and very often underfunded work of scientists who for decades have never hesitated sharing their discoveries. Open science should not be something that where knowledge will be taken hostage. And knowledge produced through scientific work. We have we have to have an open spirit. And today, more than ever, the 7+ billion of the people inhabiting the earth have to virtually give each other the hand and think about the future. We have to fight the fight for free and enlightened science. It has all of us together. It has to be enlightened by the good type of skepticism which comes to us from ancient times and which helps us keep our head high. Thank you very much.
And it's obviously, and I absolutely agree with you here that science should serve the current and future needs of people, and our scientific NGO should serve as a nexus for civil society, for governmental agency, for activists, and for those who are actually very much concerned about how to make a change, how to make a better life. And also it is very important to understand whether this is actually an item and question to pose here, whether science is a common good or a meritorious good. You know, and another thing here is that now we're I've witnessed the first maybe attempts to cooperate on combating COVID, and just the last example is the starting of cooperation between AstraZeneca pharmaceutical company and the Gamaleya Institute of Moscow invented Sputnik 5 vaccine, which is really good because this vaccine should be these all kinds of vaccines should be available, accessible, and affordable for the rest of the world. Okay, and now let me try again to connect Ms. Peggy Oudboten, Director of the Division of the Scientific Policy. Yes, we can hear you well. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us, and the floor is yours now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Apology for not connecting earlier. We had a problem in the office. I don't know what the problem is. So anyway, thank you very much, organizer, for inviting me. And thank you very much for inviting Science, to make a short presentation on this and envisioning a better and sustainable future. Just want to say that we all, UNESCO, are the heart of this Sustainable Development Goal, and we're calling all members to join us. But if we have to address the challenges of Sustainable Development Goal together, whether it's UNESCO, society, we require efficient, transparent, vibrant, and scientific and engineering community, which involves society so that we don't leave anybody behind. And the COVID crisis brought this for us to have international collaboration at all levels with NGOs, addressing issues of climate change, natural and man-made disasters, biodiversity loss, water crisis. We also know that now with COVID, it brought the forth that there's lack of skills and competencies for us to drive into the next agenda. And we need social, economic, and cultural participation in all this to address these global challenges. So how do we do it? We need to bridge that knowledge gap, which means we need to open science and engineering to society. And that is why member states at the 40th General Conference mandated UNESCO to drive this process of open science. We know that scientific information is all fragmented globally, but we need to understand and see the opportunities and challenges that open science has for us. So what are we doing now? We have already started the process. We have had a first draft of the recommendation, which we presented to DG. Now it's with all member states. We've done all the regional consultation with NGOs, members, with youth, so we're compiling this, and I will entreat all of you to go online here so that you can make your input up to the 30th of December. What did we find in this? This open science recommendation has 5 areas which were identified by the International Advisory Board Committee, represented by all of us. There's an aim, objective, definition, core values, area of action, and monitoring. But I'd like to go straight to the preamble. And the preamble, the COVID has brought to us that we must respond to humanity. We must, solve this global, problem at a global level. But it's always important to us bring science, technology, and innovation for human programs so that we can bridge the gap. And how do we do it? It's important that we fulfill that human right. And Mr. Moderator, you articulated this very well. Fulfill human right to science so that we don't leave anybody behind, and make accessible to everybody science which will benefit everybody. That means that the open science, we are looking for it to democratize knowledge at any level, whether NGO, public level, society, indigenous knowledge system, we need to do it. And then we also need to respect cultural diversity and diversity of knowledge holders and sources of knowledge. And I was interested to, hear that, yes, the youth also have their knowledge and we should be able to tap them. It's not only the other way around, but also citizens and indigenous knowledge people. So what is the definition so far that we've got, which will interest all of you, and we're still formulating, is that we have to make scientific knowledge, methods, data, evidence freely and available and accessible to everybody. We have to increase scientific collaboration and sharing of information for the benefit of science and society. And we also have to open the process of scientific knowledge creation and circulation to societal actors beyond institutional scientific community. And that's why we are happy that we're doing this with the NGO community. And scientific output should be as open as possible and only as close as necessary, mindful of the issues related to security, privacy, and respect for the subject area. It is a very complex one, but I need to do two, that they should be open to indigenous knowledge and open to scholarly knowledge and for inquiry. What are the actions that we expect all of us to? We want to promote a common understanding of open science. We want to develop an enabling environment. We want to also invest in infrastructure. And this was mentioned earlier on. If we want to have education, we need to invest in the infrastructure. And there's so much variation from region to region, country to country. We need to address this. We also need to invest in capacity building, science, technology, innovation. We also need to transform scientific culture and align incentives to open science. We also want to promote innovative approaches to open science at different levels and at different stages of the scientific process, whether it's research, conceptualization of the information, or transfer of the information. We really need innovative approaches to do this and bringing everybody together so that we don't leave anybody behind. We also want to promote international collaboration. And I'll just say, one of the programs we run with NGOs is STEM education. We really need the NGOs to come back on us so that we can create that creative mind, innovative future. The industrial revolution that we require has to start with STEM education and also acculturation of science. We also need to inspire the next generation of thinkers and make it accessible so that they can have hands-on learning experiences. One of the programs that we do together with education and culture, education for sustainable development, or culture of science, or museums, we need to have this. We also need to involve the girls. We can't afford to have 50% of the population not being brought along. They must not be left behind. That's why UNESCO's one of our 2 priorities is Africa and gender. And we want to really articulate this in it. We want to thank you for making this possible for us. And we're ready for any questions. So thank you very much, everybody, and thank you, moderator.
Thank you very much, Ms. Otebortain, and thank you very much for your very exhaustive and very well-structured presentation that really give me also a thought that we will have to focus and to forge more and develop scientific diplomacy. This is absolutely a prerequisite for us to achieve all other goals here, because science should be over borders. It should be like a world notion. And when we put all our efforts together, we will make a change. Thank you very much. And now I'm pleased to give the floor to the next speaker, who's Mr. Jacques de Merier, General Delegate of the World Federation of Engineering Organization. Okay, Mr. Merier, the floor is yours, please. Please unmute your microphone. Thank you very much.
Good. Okay. Bonjour à tous.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, a few words about the World Federation of Engineering Organizations. This was set up more than 50 years ago, and it represents approximately 30 million engineers throughout the world through about 100 member organizations. We work in close cooperation with UNESCO, and in particular with the Mrs. Peggy Oti-Boateng's division. In November 2019, just about a year ago, the UNESCO 40th General Conference proclaimed the 4th of March as the International or the World Engineers Day, and we're very proud to have contributed to this. We engineers are here to transform the results of science into technologies and equipment at the service of everyone. And this is why engineers are indispensable to the realization of all of these 17 SDGs. Now, since the SDGs deal with economic, social, environmental issues, in order to reach these SDGs for all peoples and to also simultaneously protect the earth, we need not only technical solutions, but we also need a fundamental shift in the relationship between peoples and their environment, as described in the World UN Report on Sustainable Development. This report considers that the current development model is not a viable one, and that the progress made in the context of the 2 previous decades might actually be reversed by the deterioration in social inequalities and the potentially irreversible deterioration of our environment. Engineers are here, therefore, to provide solutions, taking into account their social impacts, so as to leave no one behind, and with an in-depth review of the environmental impact so as to protect the planet. Another important social responsibility for engineers is to promote public knowledge of science and of engineering science and engineering culture, to make people more aware of basic scientific facts, concepts, and processes to meet the public at large's concerns and to behave with integrity and to be responsible for the trust of the public at large. This public responsibility should be borne not only by scientists and engineers as individuals, but also by the community of engineers all together. As was stressed by Mr. Guterres, when we're trying to reach the Sustainable Development Goals, we have to do more, not only to mobilize science for the common good, but also to make knowledge of science progress. In order to develop this vision, the UN institutions, governments, and the private sector have to unite their efforts to promote a world engineers community, which will be unified by a common social responsibility. International cooperation in this context is essential to make sure that engineers really are very much integrated in sustainable development. To conclude, the contemporary engineer has to become a global engineer at the service of sustainable development and the general interest, and capable beyond its own area of specialty to develop a cross-cutting vision of the challenges linked to emerging technologies, to promote understanding of their sustainability, and to also become aware of its social responsibility. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Demereuil. Et je voudrais dire que vous avez tout à fait.
And synergy is the day of the world, and actually maybe the day of the century, because when we're united, we can do everything. And if there might be kind of a falling out because between engineers and STEM guys and humanities, there is not. Actually, these are the two sides of the same coin. And when they're integrated, when they are put their efforts together, and when we again practice establishing nurturing ties between all strata, academia, businesses, people, indigenous population, doctors, whoever, we can actually, as you're right to say, we are here to do our life better, and we can do whatever has been again said by the Agenda 2030 by the UN. Thank you very much. And now I have a special pleasure to give the online floor to our speaker from the United States, Professor Teresa Kennedy. And first off, I would like to thank you, Professor Kennedy, for being a very early bird, because I know that the day is just dawning in California. And thank you very much. I do appreciate it. And Professor Kennedy will tell us more about gender, inequalities, equalities, and how it should be treated, the gender gap. And please, Professor Kennedy, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the kind introduction, Henri. On behalf of the International Council of Associations for Science Education, I sincerely thank the organizers for the opportunity to join this important discussion. My presentation examines the progress documented to date regarding international efforts to build a globally equitable STEM workforce and provides examples of educational initiatives currently underway to increase the number of women in the STEM pipeline. Next slide, please. This map represents data from This map represents data from several different sources, including UNESCO, and was compiled in December 2019, just 1 year ago, providing a pre-pandemic view of the regional averages of female scientists globally. Missing from this graphic are data from the Arab states and for Latin America and the Caribbean, two regions that are making significant strides in this area. Added to the number of women in STEM in Central Asia and in Central and Eastern Europe, these four regions represent over 1/3 of the world's research and development workforce. Although there have been gains in equality between men and women worldwide, women continue to lag behind in the area of STEM, especially in Africa, Southwest and East Asia and the Pacific, and in Western Europe and North America. Why does this gender gap in STEM persist globally? It all begins with education. and is fueled by gender stereotypes and expectations regarding women's work. Next slide, please. The UNESCO publication Cracking the Code, Girls and Women's Education in STEM describes the overlapping factors influencing female involvement in STEM, reiterating the point that education and schooling play an important role in reducing this global gender gap. The next slides include examples of initiatives underway in the regions identified to have significant gender equity gaps in STEM. These efforts demonstrate their attempts to crack the code. Our role is to collaborate with them to help expand efforts internationally. We're in this together. Next slide, please. Thank you. Women scientists in Africa, such as Professor Okiki, pictured here, are serving as positive role models for girls, advocating for the inclusion of women in higher education and encouraging girls and women to participate in the development of science and technology, including computer science programming. As a result, tech hubs have been established, creating safe educational environments for women and girls to learn STEM skills across sub-Saharan Africa. Next slide, please. In India, women remain underrepresented in engineering and technology undergraduate degrees. To address this shortfall, the India STEM Foundation provides seminars for secondary students in all areas of STEM to encourage more female representation. And in Japan, the ministry is also working to expand the number of women researchers by designating super science high schools across the country and promoting summer camps for primary students. Next slide, please. The Australian government strategy has focused on creating teacher materials compiled in their Girls in STEM toolkit, and targeted programming by the Australian Science TV channel also promotes raising visibility for STEM, women in STEM widely across the country. Next slide, please. To address the gap in information and communication technologies in Western Europe, the European Commission provides funding for STEM summer camps for middle and high school girls to introduce them to a broad range of STEM subjects. The Girls for STEM in Europe program is producing impressive results, as is the Erasmus program, through makerspace events, providing opportunities for scientists to work with students of all ages. Next slide, please. Although data show that women represent only 22% of the UK STEM workforce, the number of female STEM employees is rising. The UK's goal is focusing on keeping them there. Retention is another key here. Next slide, please. Canadian women represent approximately 1/3 of all STEM post-secondary degrees in Canada, but unfortunately their career paths tend to be in the lower paying areas of STEM versus pursuing degrees in engineering and scientific roles. ACTUA, a Canadian network-based organization, supports university and college-based organizations to introduce girls to STEM studies and careers. Next slide, please. A substantial gender gap in engineering and computer occupations contributes to U.S. women's overall underrepresentation in STEM, especially for women of color, and U.S. girls are more likely to hold lower-paying STEM jobs as well. The National Girls Collaborative of the U.S. shares curricula, projects, and resources for teachers to create STEM programs for girls. Next slide, please. The examples I've shared are national initiatives. To help support STEM education on an international level, ICASE created an engineering design challenge to inspire students of all ages to identify and design solutions to challenges and worldwide problems related to the pandemic. To date, over 300 students from 8 countries have participated. The challenge will extend through 2021, and we invite teachers and students in your countries to join us. Next slide, please. I can think of no better way to close my presentation than reiterating the words displayed on this slide of UNESCO Director General Irina Bokova. There are many efforts occurring around the world to develop gender-inclusive curricula, promote collaboration and training for teachers, and stimulate interest in STEM in the early years through higher education. My presentation only highlighted a few. Through these types of efforts, we can combat stereotypes and mentor girls and young women to reform global mindsets and build our international STEM force. Next slide, please. Together, we can meet the social responsibility of science, researchers, and engineers of the future by striving for workplace equity and actively working together to increase the number of women in STEM. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, Teresa, thank you very much for your presentation. And actually, your presentation, is touching just a bulk of different questions. First of all, how to encourage and how to promote, so to say, stigmatization of women and girls all over the world, especially in the underrepresented sub-regions of the world, like India, and like Arab countries, like some African countries and Latin American countries. And also, it is associated with another thing, which is the issue of the level of remuneration of women in science, and also the issue of self-esteem, because we know that some 52% of all guys enrolled in the universities are women, are girls actually, and gradually and eventually only up to 10-15% are climbing up the ladder to occupy the managing position in scientific institution. And it is also a real conundrum. And another thing, just to follow up on your slide with Irina Bokova's quotation, I would like to tell that already for a few years, February 11th is the International Day of Women and Girls in Science, which is absolutely fair. And the historical background of this International Day is that it is was especially done in commemoration of outstanding British lady, Ada Lovelace, it seems to me, who was in fact the first IT specialist. It was 200 years ago, and she was a woman. And now it is only fair, I think, that we will commemorate, and now on, please remember this date, which is February 11th, which is the International Day of Women and Girls in Science. Okay, thank you very much, dear esteemed speakers, and thank you very much for your thoughts. Thank you very much for your presentation, which were very tracing, very interesting, and very enlightening. And I would like to do what is called a free microphone. I will give you like 2-3 minutes to each of you just to share your feelings. What are we supposed to do with science? How we're supposed to develop it? Also including different aspects, different ethical aspects, and different scientific challenges. And maybe there is some problem which is actually fraught with for the future of science, and you would like to share with us. Okay, and let us start from Ms. Peggy Oteboateng. Will you please?
For that question. I think the future is bright for science. COVID has brought to us that you cannot do anything in this world without science, whether it's social science or hard science, acculturation of science. We need to understand, because we need to base whatever we do on evidence. And this is why we should not leave anybody behind. That is why it is very important now to try and build the STEM education from the childhood upward. Everybody should understand science, so that you can understand what is happening around your world and build resilience to it. So even if you're not going to go fair to have maybe a professor in science from a former professor or academic, the knowledge of scientific knowledge and information is key, and it has to start from the childhood, and everybody has to know what science is. That's why UNESCO is very keen on teaching of science, so that nobody will be left behind.
Okay, thank you very much. And it is really very important issue. And I hope that in the course of time, eventually we come to understand it, and not only in UNESCO and other international organizations, but in localities all over the world. Thank you very much. And now, Professor Bakaleshi, will you please share with us your feelings and your ideas?
Oui.
I think, as it was said, science is rehabilitated and scientific expertise is highlighted. It's not only the scientific expertise of scientists, it's also about developing science culture. And I'm linking up with the first panel on culture. We think that scientific culture is part of our overall culture. And if public authorities do not invest in culture in general and scientific culture in particular, this will not be possible. Scientists cannot continue to work with low pay, undervalued, without freedom. What we want today as scientists, but also as citizens, is to defend academic freedoms and the possibility to work with civil society stakeholders, to have actually an exchange between academic, non-academic stakeholders within the framework of specific programs based on science, so that science can be everywhere in society. Otherwise, we will be working in silos, and that is not possible. We will lose the benefits of all the work that is being done today.
And now I would like you, Mr. Demelier, to share, but please be a little bit short and concise because we are running low on time, and please share your feeling with us.
Very simply, I'd like to repeat what I said and to go a little bit beyond. Today, engineers, to achieve everything they have to achieve in the area of sustainable development, they need to develop international partnership, interdisciplinary partnership, and thirdly, they also need to develop their social responsibility. And this is the only way they can have their full place in society to achieve sustainable development goals.
And I would like you, Teresa, to share with us your ideas about science and possible future development of it.
Yes. Well, designing
des événements futurs. Alors, il faut qu'il y ait des stratégies au niveau gouvernemental et des ONG à l'échelle internationale pour qu'on puisse recruter, retenir les femmes dans les métiers de STEM. Cela peut réduire l'écart. Il faut qu'il y ait un peu plus d'inclusivité avec une nouvelle génération de femmes, avoir des politiques scientifiques pertinentes. Et ce n'est que par l'éducation que l'on peut y parvenir pour retenir les femmes dans les métiers STEM. Merci.
Actually, I was hearing the end of the French translation because I had to hear you in French. Okay, thank you very much. And just to recap and sum up our discussion, we now understand, I think, that science is not a pure knowledge, and it is a complex of the holistic research, of the ethical issues, of inclusiveness, of involvement, of scientific diplomacy that bridging over the frontiers, bridging over and uniting peoples all over the world, which is very important and which is also contributes a lot to our secure, environmentally safe, scientific developed world of the future. And thank you very much for all taking part in this discussion. Thank you.
Bien, merci. Merci infiniment à vous toutes et
Thank you. Thank you to you all who moderated this afternoon. We are still hearing a voice. I know that there were hands raised. I'm sorry, but we're lagging behind time. I just wanted to give the floor to Professor Mveondo for his conclusions. He accepted to do that. I'm very grateful. So I give the floor to Professor Veondo. Thank you. I don't know if you see me. I would like to thank you all for the quality of the discussions and the exchange that was really fruitful for me. The first thing that I'd like to say now where we stand today, when you're speaking, you should be sorry for the ears who are listening to you. And I just wanted to say what I feel about that, about what has been said. Sometimes I have discussions with my grandchildren when they ask me, well, Granddad, what is important today? I say that there are three things which are important today.
First of all, what is important is that we should develop within each one of us love for our country. And this really summarizes everything that connects us to our country: the environment, the history, geography, culture, national languages. In other words, everything that builds the social fabric and relations within that country. The second thing that we need to recall is that more than ever, we must love others. Love people. We have to learn to do this. We have to, of course, use all the communication tools, and in this world where there is so much misunderstanding, we need to have a sort of like a GPS system that guides us through different environments, bearing in mind that peace should be the ultimate objective. And the third thing that I have gathered from the discussions is about science and technology. This means that we need to make sure that everyone has at least one profession, if not more, because that is what is going to enable this person to grow and adapt to the environment. When one has actually mastered all three dimensions, we can talk about bridging divides. Well, the scientific divide is even bigger, I would say, than the digital divide. And it's only then that we will be able to go beyond law. The law gives us a framework. But in order to act on different funds, we need to go beyond what the law prescribes. We have to develop empathy, and that is why what I just said is, I believe, important. We share all your values about cultural difference. Mrs. Odi-Boateng highlighted that. I would also like to thank Mrs. Dina Bakalexi for what she said, and Madam Secretary General of the EU as well. I think all these ideas need to be used to rebuild ties and make them more solid. Thank you. Thank you, Professor. Thank you very much. One last word from our President.
Mais je sais. Alors, il y a une main levée de Patrick Gallo. Je ne sais pas si on va...
Patrick Gallo has raised his hand. Is it on science? What is the topic? Can you please tell us if it's on the theme of science or not? Patrick? No, I'm sorry, I didn't ask for anything. I haven't asked for the floor at all. I think I raised my hand by mistake, says Patrick. Diego, I didn't ask for the floor. Okay, well, in that case, if there's no further request for the floor, I'll give it back to Marie-Claude. Thank you, Diego. Thank you to all the panelists, moderators. It was indeed a very interesting and enriching theme for all of us. UNESCO is a laboratory of ideas, as it was before, where we can discuss science, culture, education, information for peace. And I think that we have learned a lot today and we have drawn many conclusions. And I liked what Professor said, we must learn to love the world. And I think that's absolutely right. We need to love each other as well. So I just wanted to make a small announcement on the call for proposals, for recommendations on the two sites of the committee, committee.liaison.ong.unesco.org, and second one, committee.ong.unesco@gmail.com. So thank you very much. Please send us your recommendations and we will have a discussion on them tomorrow. Martin Levy has asked for the information to be put on the screen. I'm not sure if it's possible. And also C4C5 is available now in French and in English a couple of hours ago. Thank you very much for your attention. Should I give the floor back to somebody, or is this the end of the meeting? No, there was nothing to say, nothing to add. Thank you. Okay, then. Thank you very much to all of you. Sabina, do you have anything else to say? No, nothing else. Thank you. That is it. Thank you very much. Have a good rest. Congratulations once again for the elections of David Grosso, and congratulations to those who have already been elected. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening. See you. Bye-bye.
The recording has stopped.